quiet baby isn't always a happy baby. And that sentence might be the most important thing you hear today. Because if you're like most new parents, a quiet, calm, non-crying baby feels like a victory. It feels like you're doing everything right. You look over at your little one sitting peacefully in their bouncer, eyes open, not fussing, not demanding anything, and you exhale. You think, good, they're content. But what if that stillness isn't peace? What if, in some cases, the silence you're celebrating is actually a sign that something important isn't happening, something your baby's developing brain desperately needs? This is the conversation nobody has with first-time parents, and it's time to have it. You're in your living room. Maybe you just finished feeding. Maybe you've been on your feet all morning, managing the chaos of early parenthood, the diaper changes, the feeds, the soothing, the laundry that never ends. And then, for a moment, everything goes quiet. Your baby is just sitting there, wide awake, not crying, not reaching, not looking at you, just still, and you think finally, a break. You grab your phone, maybe make a cup of tea, let yourself breathe. And why wouldn't you? You've been conditioned by relatives, by parenting groups, by well-meaning strangers to believe that a quiet baby is a good baby, that non-crying equals happy, that stillness equals satisfaction. This belief is so deeply embedded in our culture that it has its own shorthand. Oh, she's such a good baby. He never cries. She just sits there and plays by herself for hours. These are offered as compliments, as signs of an easy, thriving child. And for the exhausted parent on the receiving end, they feel like relief. But developmental neuroscience tells a very different story. And once you understand it, you'll never look at baby silence the same way again. The assumption that quiet equals contentment is one of the most common and most consequential misunderstandings in early parenting. Here's the truth. Babies are not designed to be passive. Their brains, in the first 12 months of life, are in a state of explosive, almost violent growth. At birth, a baby's brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons, roughly the same number as an adult. But what makes the infant brain different is not the number of neurons, it's the connections between them. At birth, those connections called synapses are sparse, but between birth and age 3, the brain forms an astonishing 1 million new synaptic connections every single second. Every second. This process, called synaptogenesis, is the biological foundation of intelligence, emotional regulation, language, memory, and social bonding. And it does not happen in isolation. It does not happen while a baby sits quietly in a bouncer, staring at a wall. It happens through interaction, through stimulation, through the back and forth of human connection. Researchers at Harvard University's Center on the Developing Child have described this process using a term called serve and return. When a baby coos, reaches, makes eye contact, babbles, or cries, that's the serve. And when a caregiver responds with a smile, a word, a touch, a change in expression, that's the return. It is through thousands of these tiny exchanges every day that the infant brain literally builds itself. The neural pathways for language, for emotion recognition, for attachment, for executive function, all of them are forged in these moments of interactive engagement. And when those moments are absent, when the serves go unanswered, when the environment is consistently unresponsive, the brain doesn't develop as it should. Not because the baby is broken, but because the building blocks weren't there. Now here is the twist. And this is the part that changes everything. Some babies go quiet, not because they are happy, but because they have given up trying to connect. In developmental psychology, this phenomenon has been studied extensively, most famously through an experiment known as the still face paradigm, designed by Dr. Edward Tronick at the University of Massachusetts in the 1970s. In the experiment, a mother and baby engage in normal, warm, face-to-face interaction. The baby is animated, smiling, reaching, making sounds fully alive in the exchange. Then, without warning, the mother is instructed to go still, blank face, no expression, no response, no eye contact. And what happens next is remarkable and heartbreaking. Within seconds, the baby begins to try to re-engage her. They reach, they point, they make sounds, they smile more intensely, as if trying harder will bring the response back, but the mother stays still, and then the baby shuts down. They look away, their body slumps, their expression goes flat. They go quiet, not because they are content, but because the emotional circuit has been broken, and they have learned, in that moment, that reaching out produces nothing. That quiet, that flatness, that withdrawal is not peace. It is a stress response. Cortisol levels in those babies, measured in the experiment, spike dramatically. Their heart rates increase. Their nervous systems, unable to co-regulate with a caregiver who isn't responding, enter a state of distress, expressed not as crying, but as withdrawal. Dr. Tronick called this the still face effect, and its implications reach far beyond a laboratory setting. Because here's what this means for everyday parenting. A baby who has learned through repeated experiences of unresponsive environments to stop seeking connection may appear calm, may appear easy, may appear like a good baby, but what is actually happening inside is not contentment. It is a nervous system that has learned to cope with disconnection by disengaging from the world. Now, to be absolutely clear, this is not about blame. It is not about perfection. No caregiver on earth maintains constant, attuned interaction with their baby every waking minute, and that is not only impossible, it is also not necessary. Developmental researchers like Dr. Tronick himself have emphasized that what matters is not the absence of disconnection, but what happens after it, the repair. Parents who miss a cue, who look at their phone, who feel overwhelmed and distant, and then return, who re-engage, who reach back, are teaching their babies something profoundly important, that the connection comes back, that it is safe to reach out again. Rupture and repair, in fact, is one of the most powerful ways the brain learns resilience. What is damaging is not the occasional missed moment. It is chronic, consistent unresponsiveness, an environment where the baby's attempts to connect reliably produce nothing. What this means for you right now, in your home, in your daily rhythm, is that the way you interpret your baby's silence matters enormously. If your baby is quiet because they have just had a rich, stimulating period of interaction and are now processing that is healthy, babies do need time to integrate. They do need sensory breaks. Their nervous systems are immature, and overstimulation is real. But if your baby is routinely quiet, if they rarely initiate eye contact, rarely babble, rarely reach toward you, rarely seem to seek engagement that is worth paying attention to, not as a cause for panic, but as a signal to lean in, to get on their level, to talk to them, even when they don't talk back, to make faces, to narrate what you're doing, to hold them where they can see your face, because your face is not just comforting to your baby, it is, according to neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Siegel, one of the primary architects of your baby's brain. The way you look at your baby with warmth, with animation, with responsiveness, literally shapes the neural architecture of their prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for empathy, emotional regulation, and social cognition. Every time you respond to your baby's cues, every time you return the serve, you are not just being a good parent, you are being a neurodevelopmental engineer. You are building a brain. And here is the deep meaning underneath all of this, the thing that matters most. Your baby's silence is never neutral. It is always communicating something. Sometimes it says, "I'm taking a break." Sometimes it says, "I'm processing something beautiful." But sometimes, and this is the warning it says, "I stopped trying." Your job is not to interpret silence as success. Your job is to stay curious, to keep watching, to keep returning, to be the consistent, warm, responsive presence that teaches your baby, in the wordless language of early childhood, that the world is a safe place to reach into, that reaching brings connection, that connection brings safety, that safety makes everything else possible. A quiet baby is not always a happy baby, but a baby who has been seen, responded to, engaged with even imperfectly. Even on your worst days, that baby is learning something that no toy, no screen, no perfectly designed nursery can teach them, that they matter, that someone is always coming back, that they are worth reaching for. If you've noticed that your baby rarely seeks your gaze, rarely initiates sounds or gestures, or seems consistently withdrawn and unresponsive, even when they are rested and fed, it may be worth discussing with your pediatrician or a child development specialist. Early identification of developmental differences in communication and social engagement, especially, opens doors to support that can make a meaningful difference. But for most of you watching this is simply a reminder, gentle and urgent at the same time, to not mistake quiet for fine, to lean in, to respond, to show up again and again, in all the small, ordinary moments that your baby is counting on without ever knowing how to say so. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever caught yourself relieved by the quiet, only to wonder afterward what your baby was thinking? Or have you noticed moments when your baby really seemed to be seeking your attention and it surprised you? I'd love to hear your story. And if this video helped you see your baby a little differently today, share it with another parent who needs to hear it, because the more we understand, the better we can show up, and showing up is everything.